The games are coming thick and fast, and there's no time to waste, so let's get set up for Game Week 31 in FPL. Hey everyone, Sam here, otherwise known as FPL Pricey, and today we're going to help you get set up for Game Week 31, hopefully whilst also setting myself up as well. In the meantime though, let's take a quick look back at how my wildcard did in Game Week 30, and overall, I'm absolutely chuffed. Very, very happy with the performance, 73 points. I think the Game Week rank was my second highest of the season. So overall, very happy. Big green arrow up to 138k now. So I'm starting to creep towards the top 100, which is obviously the first objective. And then once we've achieved that, hopefully we can push beyond and see how high we can get and how close to the top 10k we can get by the end of the season. Free hit 34, bench boost 37, just in case you didn't know my strategy already. But having a look at the team in general, very happy. I went with the 3-4-3, the exact draft that I posted on here a couple of days before the deadline. I didn't do any more tweaking. I went with that exact 15. The double Chelsea defence does look slightly shaky, I will admit, although I think at their price points they're still okay. And Gusto, with 0.68 XGI in that match, seemed like a pretty good buy to me. Now, the only problem is he went off injured in, I think, the 86th minute, but we don't know how serious that is at this point. And I think for now, I'm going to just relax and hope that he's fit in the next couple of weeks. Hopefully, it's no big deal, and maybe he even plays in 31. Just don't yet. However, not treating that one as a long-term injury just yet. However, Lascelles definitely is an issue. Now, I think he's torn his ACL, but he's done something pretty major, and it's 6 to 9 months out for him, which means he is going to be a transfer out. And actually, he's about the worst player that could have gotten injured in this 15. The reason being is there are no defenders around his price point or at his price point that I can move to easily with one free transfer. I've got no money in the bank. So moving from a 3.9 defender to anyone else is going to mean I need to use another transfer because I need to set up for the bench boost. I need to get a player who is actually playing matches. So it couldn't have happened to a worse person in my 15. But the whole point of my wildcard was to set me up with enough free transfers between now and then so I can maneuver. I've got free transfers spare if injuries do happen. So I am prepared for this, and I'm going to talk you through some of my strategies in just a moment of time. Now, obviously, not much to talk about from the defence or in goal, but Bradley getting 2 bonus points from nothing in terms of attacking returns was a pleasant surprise. He was very, very involved going down that right wing. I'm hoping that he also gets to Sheffield United game in midweek, although I am crossing my fingers for that. Moving into the midfield, that's where all the action, or a lot of the action, happened for me. Vice captain on Salah with 7 points. He had a record amount of shots against Brighton. He's never taken more shots in the Premier League. So anyone who captained him can feel slightly unlucky they didn't get a bigger haul there. Moving across though, Palmer was another player who just continues to impress. I'm so glad that I kept him on the wild card. Never really in doubt, to be honest. He's insanely good value. 15 points, and he's got a great record against the promoted sides this year. Now, he is a player that I don't expect to be moving on at all for the rest of the year, and I've got a lot of value tied up in him, so very, very happy to see him continuing his good form. Moving across, the captain's armband did go on to Son. I think, again, a bit like Salah, he was slightly unfortunate not to get a bigger return. However, Son being the clinical finisher he is, means that the 1 goal he did get was enough to give him the 3 bonus points as well. So a 10-point haul from him, doubled to 20, and he was another player I was very, very chuffed to have on the wild card. Moving into the forward line, obviously one standout pick here, and that is Alexander Isak. 15 points, 2 penalties and an assist, so slightly fortunate to get the 2 penalties, but a player that I'm absolutely chuffed with as well. Now, he is the main reason that I got such a big green arrow this week, and I'm hoping he can just stay fit for as long as possible, ideally all the way up to game week 37 when I'm going to really need him on the bench boost with the double game week. But for the time being, at 5% effective ownership at my rank, he was the main reason that I got such a jump this week, such a good game rank. So any of you out there that went early on Alexander Isak, obviously you're very, very happy with the performance. Fingers crossed he can continue it midweek against Everton. So normally I would switch this round and I go with my transfer targets first, although I think after a wild card there aren't too many that I'm desperate to buy at the moment. However, the sell list is probably one that we need to keep an eye on. There are only 2 on there at the moment, but Lascelles is going to be a pretty major selling point over the next few weeks. We're going to have to get rid of him, and unfortunately we can't rely on him for double game 37 anymore. Now, him being at the price he's at, 3.9 million, makes him extremely difficult to move across from if you've got no money in the bank like myself. However, because I've got transfers spare between now and 37 that I don't have any plan of what to do with them, it means that I've got a few weeks to prepare, and I can also just leave him on my bench for a little while until I've got the money spare, and then I can upgrade him to another player. Now, speaking of those other players, I'll go through some of my transfer targets in just a moment's time, but there are double game week players in 37 who are luckily pretty well priced as well, and also a couple of single game week players that week with really good fixtures too. That being said, though, the important thing here to note is that Lascelles needs to go. He's not going to be the budget enabler that we wanted at this point of the season, which is frustrating because it makes the bench boost just that slight bit harder to get to. But I think remain calm. It's going to be absolutely fine. We've got loads of weeks between now and then to sort out. And I'm sure another budget enabler will come to the fro at some point in the next few weeks, if not already, because there are a couple that I've got in. Moving on from that, Malagusto is the second player that maybe we need to have an eye on. Now, again, I don't really think he's a major seller at this point. The underlying data look great. It looks like a fairly minor injury, but because he does have a knock, he has made the sell list. I don't actually plan on selling him at this point. Let's monitor the injury. If it turns out to be more serious and more akin to what Lascelles has got, then he will be an obvious move out. For the time being, I think at his price, even though Chelsea's defence isn't looking that formidable at the moment, I think he's still a hold. So the transfer targets are basically a list of players at this point that I wish I could get to, but I just can't, quite frankly, at the moment. Now, Phil Foden is top of that, and I think most weeks you'd be top of that at the moment as well. 60 minutes against Arsenal on Sunday, so maybe a little bit worrying there that he got taken off so early in such a big game. However, I think it was very situation dependent, and it was pretty clear that both Pep and Mikel were pretty convinced that a 0-0 was going to be okay for both sides. I think it suited them, and they weren't going to push too hard to go for the win at the expense of risking the loss. With that in mind, I think Phil Foden was probably brought off slightly early to manage his minutes and ensure that he can start in another big game at home to Villa in midweek. Remember, Aston Villa put on an absolute clinic against Man City earlier this season. It was probably Aston Villa's best performance of the season. So Pep will be wary of that, and I reckon that he was maybe saving Phil Foden for that exact reason, so I wouldn't be too worried if I was an owner. Now, he is a player that I wish I could get to at this point, and technically I could buy him for free this week, but the players that I'd be looking to sell would be Salah at home to Sheffield United, Saka at home to Luton, or Son against West Ham away from home. All three of which I want on my wildcard team and for the next few weeks as well. So I don't think that there's going to be room at the end for Phil Foden, but I am jealous of anyone who's got him, and I really wouldn't be worried at this point that he's not going to start or not going to get good minutes against Aston Villa. After that as well, they've got 2 great fixtures, including one against Luton as well, so I am going to be considering Phil Foden for the medium term as well. For now, though, can't quite get there, unfortunately. Moving down the list, Rodrigo Muniz is the budget-enabling forward of everyone's dreams at the moment. If you're looking at going on a wildcard with a 3-5-2, he's clearly going to be that third forward at the moment. And even if you're not, and you're trying to get to Salah in midfield, but you don't have the money spare, then downgrading someone like Ollie Watkins, who obviously went off at half-time for Villa on Saturday. Now, that could be an easy switch to Muniz if it unlocks the money to get to Salah in midfield with that clutch Sheffield United fixture. Now, Muniz himself, I think if you remove price from the equation, Muniz has been brilliant recently, in incredible form. He's trying some really audacious things up front. That bicycle kick, overhead kick that got the equaliser, and a sort of rainbow flick in the first half that just went over the bar as well. This guy has got so much confidence right now. You can really see it in him. and I do expect the goals to keep on flowing for the time being. He's not ideal on game week 34 or 37 because of the fixtures that Fulham have those weeks. And obviously, those are going to be the really nice weeks for bench boost, potentially. So he is going to be an issue if you buy him and have to use a bench boost in one of those. But short term, I think he's absolutely fine. He does enable someone like a Salah. And if you're dead ending into 34 and wildcarding out of it, he's actually the perfect player to bring in at this point. Moving down the list, Kai Havertz, maybe a little bit tongue-in-cheek. I don't think he's a desperate player that I really want to be getting to right now. But he's relatively cheap. He is playing out of position as a forward for Arsenal. He's been in good form recently as well. Arsenal also have a really good home fixture against Luton. Maybe there's an inkling that Arteta does rotate a little bit. So maybe Havertz, having played quite a few minutes recently, does come out of the side with Gabriel Jesus now fit and firing again. But I think overall he is good value for money. He is a differential that I'd be interested in. And especially because I'm on a free hit in game week 34 when Arsenal double, he's a player that I've definitely got my eye on for that week in particular. Moving down again, I think one of the obvious replacements for Jamal Lascelles could be Jared Branthwaite. Now, no double game week 37, so that is an issue for me on a bench boost. But it is Sheffield United that week. So Everton having quite a good defence, which they do, by the way. They've got great underlying defensive data for what is a bottom half side. Jared Branthwaite at a good price and with decent enough attacking threat from corners. Those headers from corners do come in fairly frequently. Branthwaite could be the solution here, where I think I only need 0.2, 0.3 to get up to Branthwaite from Lascelles. Now, obviously, I've got nothing in the bank at the moment, so I can't make this move this week without a hit, and I'm not going to be doing that. I've got 3 defenders that I'm happy enough to start. I'm happy enough to roll the transfer and maybe bring in Branthwaite or possibly Van Hecker, who is another option that I would be looking at in defence, and he obviously does have the double game week in 37. Either of those options I could be bringing in for Lascelles in a couple of game weeks' time for free, rather than rushing it now and also taking out a player I don't want to take out yet, just to free up some funds. So for now, I think Branthwaite is fine to just be keeping an eye on. Good fixtures to come, so if you've got him, you're pretty happy. But for now, I don't think I need to go there just yet. Moving down, I think if I had more money spare, Ryan Aït-Nouri would be the perfect enabler right now. 4.5, 4.6 million, I believe. He might have had that price rise, but he's still very, very cheap. He's got good underlying data. And if you're watching Wolves, which I expect a few of you are, he's actually popping up in really, really advanced areas right now. He's actually in the box a lot more than you would expect a left wing back to be appearing there. And Wolves fixtures for the foreseeable are looking really good as well. Obviously, they've got the double game week 34. Maybe not so relevant for me, which is why I'm not that worried about transferring him in just yet. But even either side of that, they've got good fixtures in the build-up as well. So Aït-Nouri could be a player that maybe I regret not having for the short term because he does look good value for money. He is getting the potential for attacking returns, which maybe we don't see in a lot of the defensive options right now. So he is on my transfer targets. I just can't quite get there this week. So moving on to the captaincy matrix for this week. And I think there are 5 decent enough options. There will be 2 standouts, and I think that's clear to see just looking at the fixtures on the table here. Bukayo Saka at home to Luton and Mo Salah at home to Sheffield United are the standout fixtures. But allow me to talk through the other 3 very, very briefly. I think Erling Haaland is always going to be a decent option. He's not been in the best form recently, but if you look at the fixtures on the table, he has had 2 of the 3 most difficult defences in the last 2 matches he's played. So obviously Liverpool and Arsenal aren't going to be easy to break down. That Arsenal game in particular, he was really starved of service, and I'm not sure Man City were exactly going for the kill either, so he didn't get a ton of chances. His underlying attacking data is still just a shade behind Salah's now. Up until this point, it was actually ahead of Salah's, so it is reducing a little bit. But he's averaging over 1 expected return per game, so he's not a player that I'd be overlooking. And for those of you who are maybe thinking he's not value for money, I would still urge caution. I think most of us have the money now to get both Haaland and Salah not easily, but fairly comfortably. So he's not a player I'd be risking going without with the fixtures to come. Aston Villa isn't the easiest, and as I mentioned, they put on a great show against Man City last time out. But after that, all of the fixtures for City look very, very winnable. Haaland is going to be going for the throat. He's going to be going for goals in all of those fixtures as they charge for the title. And I think they're all fixtures that I'd expect him to do pretty well in. 25 attacking returns is equal best on this, and obviously the most goals on this list as well. And I think he is unfortunate not to have more than that because of his injury layoff too. So he's not a player I'd be overlooking, although I don't think he's the best captaincy option against Villa this week. Moving on, Palmer and Son, both decent enough options. I think they've proved their worth this season. But again, I think the fixtures are maybe just not stand out enough to be challenging the likes of the Arsenal fixture or the Liverpool fixture. Palmer has been fantastic, and I think he's got the second most points in FPL since he started actually playing for Chelsea this season. I think behind Ollie Watkins, the only player. But 22 attacking returns, including 13 goals, obviously on penalties, great underlying data. Man United aren't exactly keeping bags of clean sheets, so he is a differential option, but I think it's a bit too rich for my blood. Son Heung-min, again, continues to impress. The data isn't as good as the other players on this table, but he is a clinical finisher. 23 attacking returns, obviously gets the extra goal for being the midfielder. So that's one step ahead of Haaland, although to be fair, 4 of these 5 also get that as well. But again, when he gets any sort of attacking returns, he is clinical, so he is also likely to get bonus points. And as you can see, even though he was off at the Asia Cup for a little while, he's only 3 points behind Bukayo Saka as one of the top point scorers in the game as well. So Son is a player that will just rack up the points no matter who it's against. West Ham aren't exactly clean sheet warriors at the moment either, so that is a match that I'd expect Son to do well in. However, those are all the sideshows. I don't think that they're going to be the main captaincy options this week. The 2 that are probably going to be in consideration for most people are Bukayo Saka at home to Luton and Mo Salah at home to Sheffield United. Now let's start off with Saka. I think with Saka, he would have been maybe even more tempting if he didn't come off slightly early against Man City, and obviously also had that knock in the international break that meant that he basically spent 2 weeks at home rather than with England. Now, whether or not that was a real knock, whether it was just a little bit of a rest because it was just friendlies for England at the end of the day, there might have been a little bit of a agreement there to rest him because he does play a lot of minutes. Now, if that is the case, then he's probably going to be fine for Luton. He's probably going to get great minutes, and that is a cracking home game against the worst defence in the league statistically. So I wouldn't be overlooking him. However, I think because he went off with a little bit of fatigue against Man City, and also because he has been potentially nursing some sort of injury in the international break, whether or not you believe that obviously is down to you. But because of those factors, I think it's enough to make you probably swing towards Mo Salah because he just ticks all of the same boxes. It's a great home fixture against one of the worst defences. He's on penalties, even better underlying data than Saka anyway, and more attacking returns, and no longer has the injury doubt, which Saka maybe does. So overall, I think Saka is a decent option if you want to go differential, and if you back him to play good minutes against Luton, he is going to challenge Salah for the best captaincy option this week. However, I think there are just enough factors going in Salah's favour here that I just wouldn't be taking a risk going against him. Sheffield United game is an absolute cracker, and he is going to be the player I put my hand on this week. So finally, let's take a look at my team selection ahead of game week 31. And yes, I am planning on rolling my free transfer this week. It would be tempting if I had 2 free transfers to try and sort out the Lascelles injury immediately. But because I've got no money in the bank, so I'd need 2 free transfers to sort it out without a hit, I'm more than happy to just leave him on my bench for the time being. Moving across the 11, Petrovic versus Onana in goal. Neither are ideal there, obviously. But I'll go for the home fixture against Man United at home for Petrovic and cross my fingers that I get a bit lucky there. Although I wouldn't be expecting a clean sheet whichever way I played it. Moving into defence, a doggy away at West Ham. Probably not expecting a clean sheet there, but chances for attacking returns. And with defensive issues already in my 15, I'm going to have to play him anyway. Moving across, Gabriel at home to Luton. Luton are usually good for a goal, so they may challenge Arsenal and break the clean sheet, but I still think there's a reasonable chance they do keep one. Arsenal obviously being the best defence in the league by quite some distance this year. Gabriel also very good from corners, and Arsenal have been exceptional, especially since the winter break, at scoring from corners, from set pieces in general, so there is always the chance of an attacking return there. Moving across to Connor Bradley, I think again, maybe there's a slight risk he gets rotated against Sheffield United for the midweek game, but he did play well against Brighton, so maybe there will be faith shown in him by Jurgen Klopp. Now, again, I think because I have defensive issues elsewhere, Gusto doesn't look likely to start, and obviously Lascelles is out, then I'm just going to have to hit and hope on Connor Bradley to start again, and after this week, I think it's fairly likely he'll be a sell relatively soon, and the short couple of game week punt I took on him hopefully will have paid off if he does well against Sheffield United. Moving into midfield, the power four, as I like to call them, looking really, really strong at the moment. Salah will get the armband at home to Sheffield United. I'll put the vice captaincy on Saka, unless obviously we get news that he is definitely out with an injury. I think that's very unlikely. I back him to start and I back him to perform really well. Palmer and Son were both maybe very, very differential captaincy shouts, but not going to be in consideration for the armband for me. But very, very happy to own good fixtures, and I expect them to do well against Man United and West Ham. Moving into the forward line, again, no changes there. Haaland at home to Villa, pretty happy to have him for the run-in now. This is probably one of the harder games they've got left for quite a few game weeks yet, and then after this the fixtures do turn and Haaland will be a very good player to own. Darwin at home to Sheffield United, again a bit like Bradley, maybe there is ever so slightly a risk that he doesn't start, but I think the fact that he was taken off early against Brighton around the 81st, 82nd minute means that maybe he's being held back a little bit ahead of starting against Sheffield United. Liverpool are now top of the league. They'll want to stretch that lead and they won't want to be dropping points at any cost. So starting their best possible 11, I think, will be on the agenda as long as, famously, the players aren't in what Klopp and Liverpool physios call the red zone. Now, I don't think it's a matter of, we'll rotate players in the midweek fixture just for the sake of it. It'll be whether or not they're hitting the red zone and looking a bit too fatigued to start. Darwin obviously did withdraw from international duty with a slight injury. Again, it might be a bit like Saka's. It might be doubtful whether or not it was too real. But again, taken off early in the Sunday fixture against Brighton, that could indicate that maybe he is struggling with something. However, watching the match, it certainly didn't look that way. He was pressing from the front. He looked fully fit. So I'm happy enough starting him. I think he starts the Sheffield United game, and Liverpool will be keen to put that out of sight and maybe bring him off slightly early, in my personal opinion anyway. Isak as well, extremely happy to own. I'm a little bit worried that he's consistently getting 90 minutes at the moment and he doesn't have a great injury record. But as long as he's not injured, he's a fantastic player to have. And I think I'll just deal with that issue when and if it arises. For the time being, another home fixture for Newcastle. They score bags of goals at home. So again, I'm pretty happy to own Isak. Not a captaincy option for me, but I'm really happy with that front three overall. As always, please do let me know in the comments below if you've got any questions ahead of the Game Week 31 deadline. And if you could leave a like and subscribe to the channel, that would be greatly appreciated. In the meantime, though, I'll see you on the other side of Game Week 31 as we start preparing for Game Week 32 later this week.